Can Santorini be Atlantis? To answer this question, we need to know what the evidence is. Almost 100% of the evidence we have about Atlantis comes from one source. This source is Plato's dialogues. Although they are called Plato's dialogues, they are the written version of a story told by Solon 200 years prior to Plato, so we are told. The facts. From the dialogues we know these things. The island was oblong, it was destroyed in a cataclysmic event, there were floods involved in this event. After the event, the sea around the island became impassable, the island contained red, white and black rocks, and earthquakes were involved in the event. But none of this matters if we can't believe what Plato is saying. So the first big question is, can we believe Plato? As I said before, Solon told the story. Solon was a very highly regarded man, being a poet and politician, and Plato wouldn't risk people finding out that he had lied about Solon agreeing with him, because if they found out, Plato's reputation would have turned into trash. Also, we cannot forget who we're talking about. Plato has been trusted before, so why not now?
I think that we can believe what Plato is saying is true. This is not, however, to say that we should take everything he says literally. The next big question we have to ask ourselves is, how was Atlantis destroyed? The most likely answer is that a volcano erupted, completely destroying the island. On Santorini is a dormant volcano, but 3,500 years ago it erupted, destroying a city called Akrotiri on the island of Thera, or should I say Santorini. This eruption was 6-ish times the size of the eruption that destroyed Pompeii. The eruption had 4 phases. Phase 1. This phase would have been a warning to all citizens on Akrotiri to leave. Only releasing ash and pumice, this phase would have covered buildings in ash and pumice. Although this wasn't very lethal, it laid down 7 meters of ash and pumice. Stratigraphy shows this on the cliffs of Santorini. Phase 2. This phase would have been a huge release of lava. From a person's perspective, it would have seemed like the work of a devil or god. This stage would have looked like hell had just arrived on your doorstep. Lava would be flowing and lightning would be striking due to all the ash particles. Phase 3. This phase was the most lethal. Pyroclastic flows would have occurred during this stage. Anything combustible, unless it was covered by huge amounts of ash, would have been obliterated. These flows would have been some of the worst in human history. They would have raced across water on a bed of steam. Phase 4. In this stage, the magma chamber would have collapsed, and as water rushed in to the chamber, creating steam, the pressure would have built until finally, boom! Many times the size of the atomic explosion on Hiroshima, the volcano would have exploded. Even if you had arrived in Crete, the head of the Minoan Empire, you weren't safe. Due to the large amount of pumice that had been put into the sea, tsunamis had been created. Some were found to be 60 feet tall. We know this because of parts of pottery in sedimentary rock. These 60-foot waves, or floods, would have made their way 5 miles onto Crete. Earthquakes would have also shaken the islands, giving the effects of gods punishing them. The destruction of Atlantis is not the only similarity to Santorini. Also, the way Plato describes Atlantis is the same. He talks about the pillars of Heracles, which could have been in 2 places, both of which are close to Santorini. But we have an issue. In the dialogues, Plato says that Atlantis was destroyed 9,000 years before the story was told, and that Atlantis was greater than Libya and Asia Minor. If Santorini is Atlantis, then the eruption on Thera would have had to have been 9,000 years before the story was told, and Santorini would need to be bigger than Libya and Asia Minor. So how is this possible? Humans, that's how. Since Plato was the first person to write down the story, before him the story had been verbally told. With further investigation, we found that the word for greater than in ancient Greek was meson, and the word for between was metson. Santorini is between Libya and Asia, but isn't greater. As a bonus, the word for 9,000 is 900 with an apostrophe. the word for 900 is 900. If we take 600, which was when Solon told the story, and add 900, not 9,000, we get the date of the eruption of Thera. All this because of human error. When you consider all of the evidence, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I surmise that Santorini can be Atlantis.